Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, May 6, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, national political correspondent for the Washington Post, Dave Weigel, will be with us to talk about what he's seeing on the trail. Also on the program today, new report. Humans are destroying the planet and all other life. Sorry about that. Also on the program today, Bill Barr fails to comply with a subpoena. Democrats to vote on contempt Wednesday. Meanwhile, on that campaign trail, Bernie introduces a trust-busting agricultural plan. Booker releases a gun control plan. And Biden has a plan to save our souls. Also on the program today, polls suggest 2020 turnout will be huge, but Dems have lost their enthusiasm advantage. Meanwhile, Bolsonaro gets deplatformed by New York City. The Trump administration writes new rules to allow healthcare workers to freely discriminate against non-Christians, LGBTQ folks, and women seeking abortions. U.S. sends a carrier strike force in a warning to Iran and perhaps to Americans that we may be launching a war with Iran. And lastly, John Kelly wants to remind you the so-called adults in the Republican Party, also scumbags. All this and more on today's program. Yeah, the John Kelly story is really atrocious. We will get to that later, but it is what you would imagine in many respects. We will talk about that. We will talk about those plans that have been released. And talk a little bit about the question of to impeach or not to impeach implicates the Democrats' power to enforce a subpoena. The bottom line is, in the context of impeachment hearings, a congressional subpoena has far more weight, according to the Supreme Court, than just in its function of oversight. There are limited options that the Congress can pursue in seeking to, or I guess, enforce a contempt finding against someone in contempt of Congress. The last time Congress imprisoned someone for being in contempt of Congress was 1935, if I'm not mistaken. And they could theoretically hold someone. I think there's like a jail in Congress, a couple of jail cells. They could hold them until the end of the term, and then at the new term they get released. So, I'd like to see Bill Barr in prison there. I mean, that would be fun if you could be as part of the Capitol tour too. If you could walk through and see him down there. I mean, I know I do have problems with the carceral state, but there are certain situations where I make a broad exception for people I would like to see put in jail.
Well, if we're going to have a carceral state, we might as well use it on those people.
Yeah, point it in the right direction.
That is one of the things too I'm thinking about, because I mean you do have these prisons, these jails in Congress, and it's one of those like use them or lose them type of situations as far as I'm concerned. So Bill Barr in jail, that I feel like would be enough for me to take a trip down with the kids to visit the Capitol. In the meantime,
that's Bill Barr.
There you go, kids. Don't feed them. Hey, speaking of kids, Mother's Day is coming up, and there's nothing we wouldn't do to make sure the special moms in our lives are happy. Even the non-special moms.
Yeah, I was I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but that did stick out to me.
I think,
I thought all of them were.
I mean, really, everybody's special, but on Mother's Day, moms are particularly special.
It's not deserving moms and undeserving moms.
Right. However, Shari's Berries has special Mother's Day's berries designed just for mom. They're topped with chocolate chips, pink shimmer sugar, and swizzles. I took a picture of the ones that we had that came in here.
That's the closest
before
I'm going to
you
get to trying them.
vanquish them,
I realized
without letting anybody else touch them.
Tipping that I
just
had eaten them
click.
all. And
so good.
And you choose your delivery date to ensure that mom gets your gift of Shari Berries exactly when you want her to. Look, you only have like 5 days left, so get on it today. Better yet, your satisfaction is always guaranteed. These berries are huge. They're delicious. The chocolate is awesome. I don't know what more I can say. They're delicious, and
they looked amazing.
They work even for fathers, but they're particularly for mothers just this day. But don't wait to the last minute on this one, folks. Do not sleep on this. Visit berries.com, BERRIES.com today to order freshly dipped strawberries starting at $19.99 for the mom or moms in your life. Give it to your grandma, too. Give it to your aunt. Give it to your sisters. Give it to your daughters. To make mom really happy, you can double the berries for just $10 more. Mother's Day is Sunday, May 12th. And double the berries, folks, so that everybody's going to eat them. Visit berries.com. That's BERRIES.com. Then click on the microphone in the upper right-hand corner. Enter my code Seder, based on my name, Seder, Seder. That's berries.com. Click on the microphone, code Seder, spelt like Seder. I don't know why we do that, but the Cedars do that. All right, here is Dennis Prager. And, of course, Dennis Prager, very supportive of Dave Rubin, right?
Hello.
They do Prager University. And
Too often people are not interested in ideas.
Hello.
That was Dennis Prager speaking to Dave Rubin's face.
There you go.
Doing that voice.
And longtime listeners will remember Indy Mike. This is Indy Mike's favorite program, the Dennis Prager Show. And because he listens to both sides. He listens to Prager and to Ann Coulter. And here is Prager. And just, gosh, boy, living the life. I mean, right-wing talk radio. Talk about being on the dole. Like, he doesn't even do he's just sort of just rambling here. But the point he's trying to make is, folks, is that racism, at least the notion of racism that we would have some type of white supremacy in this country, or that black people are that black people are subjected to racism in any way. That's a myth. I mean, if this sounds familiar to you, you've probably heard Dave Rubin talking to, what's her name? Lauren Southern, nodding in agreement that Jewish groups in Canada basically created the Nazi groups up there so that they'd have something to rail against. Because,
funding opportunities.
Right. Just going to
maybe this to
just
be
going
fair.
to synagogue and going and celebrating the holidays gets a little boring for Jews. And so everybody wants to fight some Nazis.
Passover's so sleepy. Could we have some skinheads around here?
Anyways, but here is Dennis Prager, and then sort of like pulling out of God knows where they got this story. I imagine it's true because statistically speaking, how could it not be true that there isn't someone giving a lecture somewhere in which you would disagree with the premise? But Here is Dennis Prager, Stylings.
And that is what the left does. Hysteria, crisis after crisis. Crisis. A black American is elected president, and the country is declared more racist than ever. The crisis of racism in America. But there's so little racism in America, except anti-white racism, that it's all made up. To the extent that there's a professor going around from Washington State.
Pause it. I just want to point out now, one of the things that I've been told by Indy Mike about what's so great about this guy is all logic. And so just to follow here, despite the fact that we elected a black president in this country, which actually all the data shows ended up creating a lot of racial polarization because it turns out there was a lot of white people who surprisingly did not realize that the Democratic Party was to the left on race than the Republican Party, and they felt that this was in many respects a metaphor for everything that they were losing in life, whether some of that was real and as a function of the structure of our economy, or imagined, or real in terms of loss of social status. They began to more intensely blame the existence of black people. But as you heard, the only real racism that we still have in this country, according to Dennis Prager, is, of course, white racism, which is shocking, despite the fact that we now have a white president.
Hello. I proved that.
And
I proved racism. Anti-white racism is done.
And
I proved it. I was elected president.
Well,
It's
is
crazy.
backlash to the white president.
That's true. But we've had so many white presidents, and now white racism is finally catching up with all those white presidents. I mean, it's sort of amazing how many white presidents we've had, but yet the durability in Dennis Prager's mind of white racism, that's pretty impressive. Anyways, continue.
It's all made up. To the extent that there's a professor going around from Washington State, I reported her name and everything, but it's just another one of these hysterics, making good money lecturing on campuses about how anyone who says I treat everyone the same or I try to treat everyone the same is a racist. Get it? Because there is no racism, they have to there is racism. There's so little racism, they have to manufacture racism where it doesn't exist.
I'll give him this. He does not sound like a hysteric.
No.
I have to say that my brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.
There you
People
go.
think we have a lot of long pauses on this show.
Right. And at least at the end of it, maybe I'm saying something. He's just going, it's
Oh, look at Sammy
racism.
with his at least maybe so I
racism.
get it pointed.
And it's
that would be funny if Sam.
No racism.
And now,
no racism.
No, and Sam's more keyed up. He'd be like, and of course, the only racism is anti-white racism, as we know. Now, ostensibly.
Oh God. Well, that's why we started doing Ken, because it's just so easy to be a right-wing talker.
Great.
So easy, so easy, and
let's just do you. That would be great.
So easy.
Welcome back.
Exactly. I can't believe how much white racism I ran into today. Everywhere I went, people were, maligning me because I was so white.
There was another professor, another hysteric. I don't know his name.
But he was a man, of course. Of course he was a white man. So, he gets in trouble. When are the white people going to get a break around here? God. All right, anyways. Hey, folks, whether you're trying to get a sweet deal on something or find the best happy hour in town, it's a good idea to read the reviews first. Right? Well, why should finding the right software for your business be any different? Read thousands of real software reviews and find the right software for your business at Capterra.com/majority. Capterra is the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business with over 850,000 reviews of products from real software users in more than 700 categories of software, from project management to email marketing, and has everything you need to make an informed decision fast. Join the millions of people who use Capterra each month to find the right tools for their business. I've told you, like, I will spend time on the Capterra website just reading about all the different types of software that exist out there, just because I didn't even realize there were this many jobs that you could have. But things like hospice software or HR analytics software, idea management software, that actually is pretty good. Identity management software, insurance ratings, I'm just in the eyes. Investment management software, investigation management software, IoT software. I don't even know what that means. iPad kiosk software.
IoT is Internet of Things.
Is that right?
Yep.
I don't even know what that means.
Your fridge has Wi-Fi.
Yeah, is that right?
You turn on your fridge with your eyeball, white boy.
IWMS software. I don't know what it is, but somebody out there knows. If you run a jail management software, job evaluation software, job shop software, kiosk software, key management software, laboratory information. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's sort of amazing. You can visit Capterra.com/majority for free today to find the tools to make an informed software decision for your business. You go check it out because it may be software for your business you didn't even realize existed. Capterra.com/majority. That's Capterra, CAPTERRA.com/majority. Capterra, software selection simplified. And lastly, it may feel like a cybercrime is something that happens to other people, but stealing data from unsuspecting people on public Wi-Fi is one of the simplest ways for hackers to make money. When you leave your internet connection unencrypted, you might as well be writing your passwords and credit card numbers on a huge billboard for the whole world to see. I'm talking to you who goes and hangs out at that coffee shop, or you go into wherever it is you go, where, like you get a muffler change, you get on the software at Midas. I don't know what company it would be, whatever, it doesn't matter. You got to protect yourself today with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN secures and anonymizes your internet browsing by encrypting your data and hiding your public IP address. ExpressVPN has easy-to-use apps that run seamlessly in the background of your computer, phone, and tablet. Turning on ExpressVPN protection only takes one click, and it costs less than $7 a month. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Protect your online activity today and find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/majority. That's ExpressVPN, ExpressVPN.com/majority for 3 months free with the 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/majority to learn more. Check it out, folks. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to somebody who spends an inordinate amount of time away from home, going to campaign rallies. And so if you want to know what's actually happening on the trail, this is the guy to talk to, which is why we will be talking to him. We'll be right back with Dave Weigel. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program a Washington Post political correspondent and author of the not necessarily political, The Show That Never Ends, The Rise and Fall of Prog Rock. Welcome to the program, Dave.
That's good to be back. Thank you.
We did play King Crimson to lead you in, and that was Matt wanted you to know that he did that specifically for you.
Yeah, I didn't hear it exactly, but I usually go back and listen to the tape of the show 5 or 6 times to hear my own voice. So I'll hear it on the replay.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you and you'll have that, and you could piece it together and create almost a full song. Yeah. That could be your Spotify playlist. All right, so Dave, you've been on, and I am a subscriber to your email, missive, the trailer, which people can subscribe to at the Washington Post. We'll put a link to that. And it really gives me a sense of, the sense that you're getting on the campaign trail. So, give just up to this point, tell us where you have been, just so that we get a notion of what your what your sample size is, or where you're reporting from.
Well, let's see. The last few weeks was Las Vegas, where there was an SAIU sponsored event on wages and workers. I was in Houston for the She the People event. I was with a couple of candidates solo. I was with Warren in Vegas with Biden on the trail. And I took a couple of days to kind of reset and refocus on here. But at this point, everyone who's running for president, except for Michael Bennet, and I guess Wayne Messam is if depending on the week, and I forgot that candidate is different. Those guys aside, I've seen everybody on the trail, so I've got a pretty good set of data to compare.
I did not even know that Wayne Messam was running, and so I appreciate it.
You got to mention him. He's just the mayor of a small city in Florida who's also running for president, apparently.
And apparently Bill de Blasio is going to jump in too. Maybe we can talk about that in a moment. But so give me so as you come back from this, what strikes you first about the people who are attending all these rallies in terms of the voters?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's not a lot of hard ideological opinions from the people who kind of self-select and show up to political rallies. For a very long time in 2018, there aren't really rallies for people running for Congress till the very end. It was a lot more going out with a canvas or going to a debate, things like that. And the people who were interested in politics were showing up to small meetings, working with individual candidates. The rallies they're bigger crowds. I think if you average together everybody's crowds, there's never been this many candidates getting big audiences for Democrats. I would say Biden, Sanders, Harris, and Warren and Buttigieg all can draw about as many people as Hillary Clinton was getting when she started running in 2007.
Wow!
So a lot of people are interested.
Are these the same people? Do you think? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Are they shopping around, or are there people going out there, or are you seeing people who have made up their minds? How much shopping is happening? Do you think?
Well, that was the second part of the answer, and I'm glad you asked that one because there's not. I said there's not hard ideology. There really isn't. You meet people all the time who want to go for the candidate they're more familiar with that they think other people would vote for, and you meet, especially at Biden events, some Biden superfans who've loved him forever, but again, there were Hillary Clinton superfans who fell off the wagon in 2007 and 2015. So you meet some of those folks, and you meet a lot more people who just kind of want to see everybody and determine who can win. And I think more in New Hampshire and Iowa, you meet the kind of voters who are unwilling to consider anybody unless they personally met them and seen them talk and gotten their question answered. That's more specific. I'd say in general people are pretty happy. I'd say when I ask people if there's anyone they don't think can win or would be running, you do meet people who resent Bernie running again, some hardcore Hillary fans, and you meet some people who, from what they've heard at Tulsi Gabbard, they're not a fan. That's basically it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, were you going to add something?
And you don't hear a lot of quizzing about policy. You do hear I wrote about this about a month ago. There's a couple efforts underway by the ACLU and by other groups to get people on the record for a number of kind of civil rights priorities. You don't hear that much, I can't vote for you unless you have this Medicare position. I mean, I've seen, it's something I'm kind of interested in the moment. Like after a lot of people spending time talking to groups and hearing from town halls and having the one questioner who really pushes them, you've kind of seen a halt on the issue demands. It's a lot more, how are you going to stop Trump? And that means everything from what's your agenda to are you electable? There's not as much I can't support you unless you check this box. Not to minimize what Medicare for All is by saying check the box, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. Now, do you anticipate, I mean, where can you compare, I mean, can you compare that to, let's say, to 2016 or to other years? I mean, is this...
Yeah.
I imagine this is fairly atypical, although I can't help but think that maybe it's somewhat reminiscent of 04 on some level. But you weren't, I don't think you were covering Democratic candidates at that point.
I wasn't. That's a good point. I mean, I've gone back and researched what the crowds were like in local press, and this you could go on C-SPAN and check some things out. But it was similar in that there's just a desire to get Trump out of there, and there's a debate that I've written about where some people just think whoever is most electable, we just need to get them in there. And there are people who are thinking more strategically. I'd say Warren and Sanders in that camp, that even Julian Castro, where you need somebody with a compelling message that would not just win in 2020, but set up the kind of movement the party has not had in a very long time.
Right.
The one that people thought might be there after Barack Obama. You hear that. But from voters, you don't hear as much. And I love talking to voters. It's been interesting. Even I think one of the more revealing times I was out there this year was I was in South Carolina the weekend of the bar summary of the Mueller report. And even then, when people were being told that, oh, the thing's over and Trump got off, you didn't hear Democrats saying, I only vote for the candidate who's going to impeach him. You heard people saying, oh, well, Southern District, New York, they're going to do their thing. And that was revealing, because people, even if they're hanging on Trump developments on the news, they're not really counting on anything but the election. And it does lead. I really do feel like the dynamic issue debate we had for a while has been paused because people are scouting out how much these guys look like they can win.
All right, so how are people making that determination? I mean, because the story right now is, at least the conventional wisdom is that Joe Biden can win. I mean, do people, when they're assessing Joe Biden, and it just occurred, like what was it that he tweeted? I don't know, the other day, that Donald Trump was not was atypical of the Republican Party, or
aberrant. He says he says the last 4 years could be an aberration, but if Trump wins again, then that's like redefine who we are as a country, which crystallizes, I think, a pretty elite Democratic sentiment. I always think when I hear that sentiment of the person at the Women's March, maybe they've been identified since then, but I never found out, who had a sign saying, if Hillary had won, that'd be a brunch right now. And there's definitely a sort of Democrat who just wants this to be over and has not thought much about permanently changing Washington. And frankly, I haven't figured out the reason why. It's kind of a mystery, because it is the argument that Democrats have really glommed onto in previous elections. Even Bill Clinton made some triangulation efforts in 1992, famously, but there still was a generational change argument. The level of kind of hunching over and hoping that people will just vote for the popular guy, that is unique, and it's been commented on, I think, in the right way.
Well, I mean,
it's also, I'd say, striking because Biden's crowds are objectively smaller than Sanders and about the same size as Harris and Buttigieg and Warren. I mean, he's for a person being treated like the odds-on frontrunner. He's old and he's slowed down. His crowds are kind of mediocre. You're not seeing the same fear that you did of like when Obama really got ahead of steam, was getting thousands of people out to events. And
is he? I mean, I saw some report that when he was in, maybe it was South Carolina, I can't remember, but that he basically over the course of 2 days had 2 private events and 1 public event. That doesn't seem like somebody's busting out of the gates and
No.
Barnstorming. Give me your sense of that, because I guess what I'm curious about is two things. Is one, is Biden exemplifying in terms of as a candidate the kind of energy, and to hear that his crowds are just basically typical, but also not just in terms of like getting that energy, but giving that energy. A, and B, I'm curious as to how much people who are coming to see Biden with the assumption that he can win because they think of Joe Biden as Obama's vice president end up walking away going like, Joe Biden may not be the guy that I think he is.
They're always too nice. I mean, this is something that I think pollsters have studied and they correct for, is people generally don't want to be rude unless they're in a bad mood and they want to talk about it. They tend to be pretty careful. And
is that right? Because that's completely the opposite of me, anyways, as a person.
Yeah, the same with me. But often people, you kind of have to fish around, and I'll ask how they think of Biden, and they'll say, "Oh, he was good." And then if you prod, they'll say, "Well, it did seem like he had the trouble getting this one thing out." And no one says. I've been there when he delivered kind of a performance, but a speech where clearly the crowd was not really moving with every part of it, and people kind of come out saying, "Oh, it was fine." I mean, but you don't see the same head over heels affair that you see after people hear from Buttigieg or Warren, and to an extent Harris. I'm not trying to talk down Harris. I just haven't seen the same. She has some people who come up in as superfans and leave as superfans. Some people who think she's not quite ready yet. I mean, I think I'm privileging this because it's the only candidate for whom I've had that actual conversation. And people worrying that she's just not at the performance level of the candidate they think could beat Trump.
Interesting. And and so, what do people say about Warren in that regard?
It is universally, she's amazing. I'm not sure she can win. You get you almost get tired of hearing about it because you hear again and again people saying, "Oh, she's great. She has all the best ideas," and then they kind of try to rationalize. I mean, there is a really defining characteristic here is how worried people are about casting that vote that screws over the country in their view by re-electing Trump, and she has not quite she's not quite fixed that. But it's May. This is what now reporters will say what a losing campaign says, which is like, oh, there's months and anything can happen, but really there haven't been ads, there haven't been debates. So a lot of this is what other campaigns are telling themselves is, they have strong opinions of Biden and Sanders because they've known them for years.
Right.
I do not. I have not seen the same thing with other candidates. There's still one thing I've noticed too, which is amazing. I have to write about is you do encounter people who are just annoyed that there are so many candidates. In the same way that you have the paradox of choice at the grocery store, like, oh, all these choices, this is stressful. You still. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can that to me makes total sense. And I'm curious as to like from a policy standpoint, or from any, actually, I don't even want to limit it to a policy standpoint, but how are these candidates sort of dividing themselves up in terms of like what lane they're in? Are they doing it on like policy? Like, I mean, because, I mean, for me, I look at it and I go, I see, Bernie and Warren in, perhaps one lane in terms of like, the type of policies. And maybe I'm wrong to exclude others, but that's the way it seems to me. And then there's sort of, then things get a little bit murkier, although Biden clearly seems like he's staking out, the furthest to the right in some way, just by disdaining all the other policies. It feels like he's just got some hostility, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder, are the campaigns doing it that way? Are voters doing it that way, or do they see other lanes that are more sort of like, this is the white guy lane, this is the woman lane, or this is the white woman lane, or this is the black person's lane? I mean, how or is it like geographic? I don't know. I'm curious.
I haven't seen people separating the candidates in that way. I mean, it's a useful way to consider them and sort them from DC, and I'm not saying it's wrong. It's happening in DC. It's not how voters are interpreting it yet. I I mean, you find high information sounds kind of snobby when you're talking about every other voter. Like, they don't have high information, but you do find a kind of voter who watches a lot of MSNBC and reads a lot online and has contrasted the candidates' plans and has come out with a strong opinion. There's just not most of the people showing up. So you might think, oh, well, are they sorting all the moderates into a lane? I don't think they could define who the moderates are, with the exception of somebody who that's all they talk about, like a Michael Bennett. And with a push. I mean, look at some of the crosstabs of these national polls. I tend not to use national polls because there is no national primary, but you're talking about people who are on TV all the time who nationally have like 25% name recognition. Right? It's very easy to tell yourself that, one, these candidates still have a lot of room to introduce, and then two, there's not much sorting going on with voters yet. They need to meet these people. I really think I keep punting, and now after the debates I have to have strong opinions, so I keep punting until after that. There's some people who just they're not going to see. Even these town halls get a couple, maybe at most like 2.5 million viewers. And how many of those are in Iowa and New Hampshire? Not that many. Like, there's just a lot of contact they need to make before they sort them out. But they're not doing it in terms of this is the centrist, this is the other one. What they do is they've heard that someone's more of a centrist, and Bernie Sanders has shaped kind of the storyline in that way, and Republicans have shaped it too. I mean, I think the president's actually been pretty ineffective at attacking individual Democrats so far this year. I think he's been pretty effective at emphasizing how they're going to run against people, and the idea that, well, Biden's the person he's made the fewest arguments about so far, the person who'd be hardest to tag as a socialist, like that has gotten through to people, but they haven't sorted everybody else out.
Interesting. And so, are they sorting them? It sounds like the one sorting they're doing at this point is just like their perception of what other people's perception are in terms of their ability to beat Trump.
Yeah, it is, and it sounds like game theory, and that's the best way to think about it. It is not at this moment based on the policy concerns, and I think I wrote a little bit about this in the newsletter yesterday. There's not much talk of foreign policy. It's not this as simple as Bernie thinks he deserves credit and isn't getting it, but it almost is, because there has been a debate about where the party would take the world if they win back the White House, and that's just an elite discussion that's not really connected with average people. I mean, I think it is the ability Trump just has, even after beating him in the midterms, this part surprised me, just the degree to which the president's in Democrats' heads, even as a pretty weak re-election candidate. I mean, I don't remember this much panic about Bush. I maybe, and I don't know why. I think it was just because
about Bush in 2004. You don't remember?
I don't remember this much. Now I remember some of the rationale, like, well, Dean can't beat him, and only Kerry can, and we need Wesley Clark because he's electable. You saw it manifested, and we need somebody with this military bio that he won't be able to attack, which ended up being folly. But you didn't see the same panic that no one else can possibly beat the guy, and then Democrats talked themselves into that right before Iowa. With Trump, it's stranger to me because he already, his peak as a political candidate, his first race was 46% of the vote, and you still see people just kind of nervous about, well, maybe now that we're in competition, but he might have something against this candidate. It's hard to explain because it doesn't connect that directly to the facts that we have about all the candidates.
Well, I mean, part of it is, I would imagine, is that Trump won when he statistically, had a very, very low odds of winning. And I think that animates people. And I think broadly speaking, relative to the Bush era, I think that phenomena is not just a function of like the reelect. Like, I personally, I mean, you laugh about that you weren't covering that 2004 election. Sadly, I was exactly in the same position 15 years ago as I am now. And people just didn't have the same level of awareness. I think there was still a lot of fear that in the wake of 9/11, frankly, and sort of the shell shock from getting into this war or the Iraq War at the time. Certainly, the intensity of the fear that he was going to get reelected was there. It just wasn't as broadly shared. which made it very lonely feeling at the time. But let me ask you this, just to get back to that sorting thing. Do the campaigns, to the extent that you know this and you talk to people on the campaigns, do they perceive themselves sorting in lanes that are a function of ideology or in some other mechanism?
The only example I've seen of that is that it is just hard to deny that Elizabeth Warren's support has a ceiling as long as Bernie Sanders is in the race. Ceiling might not be the perfect way to think of it, but had he not run, there was a different theory of the support they were going to be able to corral. There were a lot of Bernie voters who considered the rest of the party, incompetent at challenging not just Trump but republicanism, and those voters are with Bernie now, which I think has honestly frozen some of the debates that were happening in the field. I mean, there was a utility back in 2018 of being a Democrat showing up to co-sponsor some of Bernie's ideas, and now he's running, so there's no point in doing that. And so what you have instead is maybe people conceding, 15-20% of that vote and going elsewhere. Now they're not moving to the center and reaching those voters. And you and I probably agree that the center's an irritating concept.
Right.
Right. I can show you any numbers of polling that say making Medicare universal buy-in is extremely popular, making the wall is extremely unpopular, and one of those is called a compromise, and one of those is called far left. Right? That's not how it works.
Right.
So you don't see people moving away from popular positions, but you see them just kind of looking for who is gettable, and it's not quite the Bernie people yet. I mean, that's not the way Warren has been framing her campaign. Someone like a Klobuchar and a Bennett and Tim Ryan, you have people saying we're making the argument here about how you need a president who can bring Republicans in on your priorities,
right.
But we're going to do it with somebody who's not like turning 80 in their first term. And they don't say that explicitly, but that's clearly what's going on.
Interesting. And so if I understand you correctly, if Sanders wasn't there, the fight for Sanders voters would be inspiring more candidates, I guess, presumably like Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or maybe Gillibrand, I guess, to sort of adopt some of these policies that are to the left of where they've been, so as to attract that pool of Bernie voters. But with Bernie there, they basically concede, we're not going to out Bernie, so maybe we try and out young Biden on some level.
Yeah, I think that is happening. I mean, they're not explicit, but the conversations you have with strategists of other campaigns is like, look, we're all waiting for the debates. You can see it if you watch Joe Biden's speech right now. If you want to go to C-SPAN, he's just lost a lot of speed off the pitch, and they just think they have people who are going to be more inspiring to the party's base than the front runner is. And when it comes to issues, I don't think they were sincere. I mean, a lot of ways when they were adopting Bernie's positions. What changed was that whereas in April, or we're in May now, in May 2018, Kamala Harris endorsing Medicare for All meant, oh great, Medicare for All is gaining steam, and the party's going to nominate somebody who agrees with him. And Kamala Harris being for Medicare for All now is the same sort of people say. Same sort of people are saying, well, yeah, she's only doing that because she's a phony, and Bernie's the only one who could really bring it forward. And I think that's closed off some of this. I mean, just you don't see the same fight for former Burr supporters. All that I should wrap that up and say, he got, for example, 60% of the vote in New Hampshire last time, and he's polling at around 15% now. So a lot of the migration already happened. You just don't see people positioning themselves as the true progressive in the race, apart from kind of one slip-up Biden quote, because Bernie exists, so we're going to run to something else. And I would say elite Democrats, like electeds and party leaders, do think Bernie is the least electable candidate, and it's based on them saying just in a general election it'd be beating up socialism all the time. For that reason, they think that everyone would be in a better position. Every candidate would have a pretty good position. If but him, like anyone who gets it through his primary is going to have defeated the Democratic Socialists, and I think that's going to be probably $1 billion Republican campaign messaging down the tubes.
Right, because they're all going to be people who are seen at to be antagonists of that. But I mean, do you have a sense? Is it possible for you to have a sense in terms of like where you're going to get like what the value of that presumed Republican strategy would be? I mean, does that? I mean, I understand that it would resonate with the base of the Republican Party, right, which is older white men and women voters, but they're going to be there for the Republican nominee anyways, right? And presumably, the Christian vote for Trump, I don't know how it would be really significantly more energized than in 2016 because there isn't that sort of like open Supreme Court seat that was such a swing seat. I mean, is that?
Well, that's not really a Democrats' control. I mean, I've actually there's several scenarios. Let's mention two big ones, which is one, there's still a 5-4 Supreme Court, and there isn't the same. You have to vote for Trump to change this. There's actually kind of a cockiness that, I mean, Trump can't stop talking about how much they already won the courts.
Right.
So you would think logically, just the people who have a qualm don't feel the same impulse to defeat Hillary, but like Republicans like to win, and I'm struck by how much just the memory of Kavanaugh, who got confirmed, remains this huge motivator for the party. So they would say we need a president who's going to continue to fulfill, kind of be your bodyguard if you're an evangelical, who's going to confirm conservative judges and pass these rules protecting your ability to not bake cakes for gay people, or the new rule I'm still kind of reading, but that's the upshot I assumed. So basically a bunch of priorities of conservative religious groups that Trump's going to run on them, and unlike in 2016 where there were questions of whether he was sincere, his strategy has been kind of a better base delivery mechanism than any president I've seen. Barack Obama, there were things the base wanted him to do that he resisted because he worried about alienating people. Trump doesn't believe that he can alienate people. He just believes in serving the base. So that'll be the argument. We got a president who God wanted to win and is doing everything that we say. I mean, when I say and God wanted to win, I'm not trying to be glib. I mean, Brad Parscale kind of said so.
Oh yeah,
on Twitter a couple of days ago.
And I think your point. I mean, just today, or I don't know if he did it today, or I guess he made it on Friday. They were writing new rules to allow healthcare providers to be more discriminating in the types of people. Yeah, I mean that's a big. Yeah. I mean, I remember when George Bush was talking about this for pharmacists. I mean, that's been and I don't know that he ever came through with it, but Trump is coming through with it. But I guess what I'm asking is, do you have a sense that that the idea that this is socialism, where this is, we're going to turn into the Soviet Union, is going to resonate with anybody other than the people who are already going to vote for Trump anyways?
I don't think it does. And the point Biden has been making, I think, is pretty inartful, talking about how if it's 4 years, this president's aberration. The other point he makes that's not an aberration is that this president just doesn't care about anyone outside of his base. I mean, he insists on serving exactly who elected him and thinking there is enough of a vote there that would elect him again, and has with very little concern of the third party voters who are back with Democrats now. I keep going back to this, and I probably sound monotonous, but I'm amazed. The Republicans lost everything in the Midwest in 2018. Everything competitive, everything in the state that swung the election, they got wiped out. So instead of dealing with that, the president's just kind of retweeting Scott Walker to insist that there's some chicanery that you need to stop. And I feel like there's this whole conversation now about whether he would leave office, et cetera, which seems like a stranger thing to focus on than the voting rules that'll be in place on Election Day 2020. Certainly when I talk to Democratic lawyers, the DNC and stuff, if Trump loses, he loses. What they're worried about is Republican-run states making it more difficult to vote, as we're seeing in Florida, right now.
Right.
And so that is kind of an issue they have to deal with no matter who the nominee is.
Do you have any sense of how people are receiving this sort of message from Nancy Pelosi, which is on one hand, the guy is so dangerous that he may not leave office unless we have a huge victory. And on the other hand, maybe we can make a deal for him on infrastructure. Like that's it. I mean, to me, that seems like stepping on your own, narrative, right? I mean, it's like a joke on a joke type of thing, hat on a hat, as they say.
Yeah.
I understand why I get that, but do people on the do voters, are they even keyed into that? I mean, who is that for, if not for voters? Or why is she doing that? Do you have any sense?
Wait, I missed the part of the question. Why is she doing what?
Well, Pelosi, where she's saying on one hand, the guy is so dangerous that he may not leave office, right? Which I don't remember any politician ever saying that about another politician, frankly.
Yeah.
And then
I think the point she was trying to make was that this is a president who always cast doubt on the integrity of the election. The way that Democrats dealt with that in 2018 was just beating him so badly in the House that he couldn't say anything. And so it was it's become an elite question to ask, again, because there's a certain donor mindset that's never made sense to me. The same brain spasms that made people say in 2016, well, Trump doesn't really want to win, Trump will drop out if it gets hard. It's the same attitude that says, well, maybe Trump will never leave office. Maybe the people, and it frustrates Democrats. It frustrates Democrats because, like I was saying before, they see a lot more proximate threats to whether the election will be fair or not than like the fantasy story. But I think it is an elite conversation, and my sense was it crept into it. I mean, I think it's something Bill Maher says all the time. So it crept into this interview. It's become kind of a fun question to ask Democrats, but do you think Trump would concede if he lost? And that's the way she chose to answer it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a manifestation of a lot of things Democrats are thinking right now.
Okay.
Except in that there's just always that pool of people, and they're on Twitter too, who rather than dealing with the reality of the campaign are like, but what about this fantasy scenario? What about Voldemort?
I will say that I will cop to A, not being a donor, but B, part of the donor class, but B, I thought that Trump would drop. I never thought he wanted to be president, and I'm not sure that the reporting is contrary to that. I don't think he thought he was going to win necessarily, and I think if he leaves, he's going to do it with the most aggrieved possible way, because that sets up a business opportunity after the fact, it seems to me. But I guess I was just curious as to if people are registering this sort of mixed message of Pelosi, which I perceive as a mixed message, and maybe you're saying it's not really that strong of a message or that deliberate, of he's the worst ever, but we shouldn't impeach him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that has gotten across because it's almost, what would I compare it to? Jeez, I was about to make a terrible Marvel reference, which I actually think would make sense, but it's close your ears if you haven't seen the biggest movie in the world yet, the Avengers 4. But there's a magic weapon that's used, and then after it's used, the user destroys it so it can't be used again. And that's almost the way that impeachment worked in 1998. Whereas Republicans used it, they got exactly what they needed to, in terms of discrediting Clinton and making voters exhausted with him, and setting up the narrative that George Bush would bring us back to decency. And then having used it, people just have such traumatic memories of how stupid the whole thing was, they don't want to use it again. They hear impeachment. I'm convinced people just don't know what impeachment is. I mean, when you tell people that 2 presidents have been impeached, they don't believe you because they think it means that they're removed from office. What I'm surprised Democrats aren't doing is taking the step that Democrats did 1973 and Republicans did 2000. Very different situation, 2013, of just creating a select committee to investigate something.
Right.
The Republicans did this with Benghazi. There was a Watergate committee. That's most of the things you've heard, frankly, on Watergate were from the Watergate investigation in Congress, not from the impeachment committee. The impeachment was a House committee. When you talk about Sam Ervin and Fred Thompson and all that, they were in the Senate. So there's just there's a belief that the Jerry Nadlers of the world, et cetera, can keep focusing on this, and that is going to get the point across more than an impeachment fight, because people don't know what impeachment is, and it's just, why drag yourself into it? Which it does seem completely defeatist. And I think one reason that Warren did very well in polling in the last 2 weeks was that she was, I think this is one of her strengths in general. She was never a politician until 2013. Like, she never ran for anything until she was in her 60s. She's not absorbed sort of politician think and like, well, if I make this point, then 13 moves down the line, I could lose my queen and my rook. She just kind of read it and said, okay, this report says he committed impeachable offenses. And I think people listened to that, thought that was bold and straightforward, and took another look at her. That's my sense of what happened recently. Not that they all agreed, yes, we should impeach, just that, okay, here's somebody who's dealing with the facts.
Interesting. Well, Dave Weigel, it's fascinating stuff. People can read your dispatches from the trail by signing up for the trailer at Washington. Yeah. And, of course, read your articles. Dave, always a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks. Dave Weigel, Washington Post. We will turn to Dave from time to time as the campaign moves on. I mean, I think the interesting thing is that we, 2 months ago, was it even 2 months ago? We were like, Kamala Harris, whoa, what gangbuster. And now it's not. I mean, I think
we were giving people a little too much credit, I think.
Well, I think there is, it takes a little bit of time to get back into sort of like the modality of thought of a campaign, which is when the new person jumps in, they're always most interesting. And then they rise and fall. And it's definitely worthwhile to go back and look at polling. This time in 2004, Joe Lieberman was in the lead for the polls. He did not turn out to do so well, much to my enjoyment.
Did he actually say Joe meant him, or was that a joke that somebody did about him?
I feel like I don't know. You gotta go back and read Atrios. Basically, I would imagine any type of like meme like that, I generally would come from Atrios's site. But I do think that we're going to have a much better sense of what things are after a couple of debates. And so what? We shall see.
Pulled the wrong tab over.
Yeah. Matt is like really knee deep into statistical analysis.
Literary Hangover just got approved for monetization on YouTube, so feeling pretty happy.
So that's awesome. So
Mazel
that's
tov.
Just the way it got. They just
they give you some. Exactly.
You doing some videos?
Yeah, I might start doing some live streams now.
Ooh,
nice.
But we will check in with Dave. In the meantime, what we're going to do is head into the fun half, folks, and remind you that this program relies on your support every single day. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. What do you get? Extra content. You get the ability to support the show that you listen to on a regular basis. And you get it all commercial free. So go to jointhemajorityreport.com, become a member. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Also, a reminder, you can take a leap into the future with Capterra.com. It's the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business. With over 750,000 reviews of products from real software users, Capterra can help you make an informed decision no matter what your business needs. Visit Capterra.com/majority for free today. Noodle around on the site. Find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA.com/majority. Today is Monday. Tomorrow night will be Tuesday. What will be happening on Tuesday night, Michael?
Indeed. At 6 p.m. before the main show, we're going to do a live stream with Mike Khanna on the South African elections, which are coming up on May 8th. And then in the main show, Ranique Allen is joining us to talk about her new book. And then Ben Burgess is going to join us in studio to talk about logic, emotions, and how to win a left-wing argument. All that and, of course, a lot more. Patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube, and check out the new Illicit History of International Law with Kristen Pear Anderson.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, we have unlocked our new series, Prolet Cult. That's producer AP Andy talking about UFOs, conspiracy theories, and the paranormal from a Marxist and sociological perspective. So that's unlocked today. If you're not a patron, you can listen to it anyway. Also, we recorded an episode with Katie Halper over the weekend talking about the 90s, from all the goofy pop culture we associate with the 90s to how the politics and economics of the 90s have prefigured a lot of the things that are happening right now. So that'll be out on Wednesday. I also wanted to plug, I'm going to be appearing at Katie Halper's live show that she is doing with Struggle Session. Indeed. And that is this Friday, May 10th at Littlefield in New York City at 8 p.m. It's going to be Katie Halper and Struggle Session, along with special guests Matt Taibbi, Jamie Peck, that's me, and Jake Flores. So if you're in the area, come check it out.
Matt?
Coming up on Saturday is The Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A lot of people might think it's pronounced Hiawatha, but it's pronounced Hiawatha. It was one of the most famous poems of middle of the 19th century.
Where's the board again, Sam?
And and it's by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Say it's Hiawatha.
Hiawatha.
Wow.
And we talk about it as a sort of example of the sort of noble savage myth and sort of romanticizing Native Americans, and also being sort of inevitabilist about how we're going to take the land from them. But I also found a New York Times review of the poem at the time, and it says this. It's like as if Barry Weiss was writing for them at the time. As an Indian saga, embalming pleasantly enough the monstrous traditions of an uninteresting and, one may almost say, a justly exterminated race, the Song of Hiawatha is entitled to commendation. So yeah, that was the reception it got at the time.
Jesus.
My brain is still in recovery mode. Taking on so many important high-level ideas.
Well, look, you got to listen. That's one opinion, and if we shut that out, then we can't get that sense of a perspective.
Yeah, and I also introduced a game called How Racist Was Edgar Allan Poe, so you can check out that.
Oh, dear.
Yeah,
it's hard out here for Jewish anarchist goth.
I love how we're doing games now on Literary Hangover. Yeah. Literary Hangover has entered the game phase. I like it.
Gamification of...
All my faves are so problematic as a Gothic American.
Poe was very problematic, yeah.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half of the program, wherein we take your calls, we talk about fun things, and we take your IMs for a little bit of time. We had a lot of police activity and siren activity these days. What the heck is going on with this now?
Someone called the ambulance for that Prager U guy.
That's right.
Here it comes.
Okay, we got the IMs up. I think that does it. Be silly. Hey, Sam, I really think that Biden's poll lead is because people think he would be the most likely to beat Trump. Do you still believe that people should vote strategically? It seems to me that it leaves us with results that are some perverted combination of popular desire and amateur political pungery. Well, yes, I do think. But I do think that the reality is that I think that, and again, obviously this is just my opinion, but I have a feeling there's significant data. Like, for instance, I think there's a much better chance that Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump than, say, Wayne Messam, who's the mayor of Miramar, Florida. But I think it would be very difficult to say that Joe Biden has a significantly better chance of beating Trump than, say, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or even Kamala Harris, for that matter. I mean, I just don't think that. I mean, people can make that assessment. I just think it's much easier to sort of really say it with any type of assuredness that Eric Swalwell is not going to, is not necessarily. Although maybe he could. I don't know. But I think it would be a safer bet to say that that's someone who is going to have a tougher time of beating Trump, basically because of his profile, and he's not associated with anything.
Yeah, you should vote strategically when it makes sense.
Right. Well,
you should vote strategically.
Otherwise, it's not actually strategic.
Exactly.
Confucius say.
Let's play this. This is Seb Gorka, who I don't know. I mean, look, there's been a lot of things that Seb Gorka has said that is ridiculous and pathetic and sad and stupid. That's true. But I think this clip, and people can correct me if they have a different opinion, but I think this clip shows him to be a liar and a grifter, maybe more than any other clip that we've seen, because the nature of the lie and the nature of the grift is pretty apparent here. And it's not just ideological, right? Like, there's a lot of things he says that is just stupid that I've always attributed to certain ideology. This is one that just leads me to believe, like, oh, he is just out and out shamelessly lying and performing in such a way that he knows he's lying. And so has to lay it on a little bit thicker. Like this is the classic, there's a tendency for people who are, commentators or pundits or, public speakers in any way that you don't let them see you sweat. And sometimes when you really are sweating on the inside, it makes you a little too effusive. Like you're like, I'm
overselling it a bit, sir.
Exactly. And this is
red.
This is him watching. This is him overselling it. Now, somehow this guy gets on C-SPAN, it seems like every 15 minutes. And one of the problems with C-SPAN is that, you got the hosts, they're always very extremely neutral. We'll give an example for that in a moment.
Some people say you're not being too fair to the Jews, Mr. Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's totally fair. All right, let's go back to the phone
Let's go back to the phone lines. This is the Democrat line.
Here's Daniel next up, Germantown, Maryland. Democrats line.
Yes, hello, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Mr. Gorka, you previously said that Trump was against these stupid wars, but that found a reason to be in support of regime change in Venezuela. And I found that striking, seeing as how your reasoning was that Maduro is a brutal dictator and he's oppressing his people. However, I don't see the same attitude towards Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, a brutal dictator who's definitely brutally oppressed his people, especially the opposition, while in Venezuela, the main figurehead of opposition that's courting the international community that's certainly interested in the petrostate, his main opposition is running through the streets, not arrested, not having his head chopped off.
But being run over by armored personnel carriers, that's okay? Oh my gosh. Okay, this is the classic leftist Howard Zinn, Michael Moore argument of moral equivalency. Who is the opposition that Mohammed bin Salman has been active against in Saudi Arabia? They're not pro-democracy demonstrators. It's the Muslim Brotherhood. It's members of the regime who've been supporting groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS for decades. The idea that Maduro and MBS is the first Saudi leader in years who is trying to purge his nation of those who have been funding and giving succor to the global jihadi movement. This idea that there's moral equivalency between Maduro and MBS is asinine.
All right, pause it. And it's okay. So now he gets away with this sort of like just general, like generalities, right? Like with the idea MBS is the same as Maduro. There's people being run over in the streets. Now, the first point is sort of, I think, telling. You can't name the political opposition that MBS has arrested and put in jails, basically because they never got enough press. They were not free long enough to gain any type of like traction in the in our news. I mean, there are many people in prison, not the least of which members of his own family that were arrested and put into house arrest or whatnot. Other peace activists, but their names are under the radar.
A lot of activists. I mean, when he decreed some of those reforms, like women being allowed to drive, he also was imprisoning the woman activists who had pushed for that to happen, specifically as a clear statement that these reforms were a gift from the king, not reform. So
Lujain Halthalal and Mayasa Al-Moudi were arrested. They were the ones who were protesting to end the driving ban, and they were once were jailed for it. Human Rights Watch spoke about that, and put out stuff. I mean, there's been more, but continue.
Between Maduro and MBS is asinine. It's risible.
Has MBS put the U.S. in a difficult position by his response, or some might say lack of response, to the assassination, the clear assassination of Mr. Khashoggi? And
look, absolutely.
Now, pause it for one moment. Let me just, that question is stunning. I get.
Was it difficult that they chainsawed his body apart in the embassy in Istanbul?
Let's just
that
reiterate,
put you guys in a difficult position.
Let me just reiterate what the question is. Did the murderer, the one who ordered the assassination of Khashoggi, put the U.S. in a difficult position by not responding to the charges that he triggered the assassination of that man? Oh, yes, transparency is really an issue here. Go ahead.
Response, or some might say lack of response, to the assassination, the clear assassination of Mr. Khashoggi. And
look, absolutely. That has put us in a difficult position, but at the end of the day, it's not what the Washington Post or the fake news industrial complex would have you believe. This man, Khashoggi, was an apologist for jihadists. He was an apologist for the Muslim Brotherhood.
So we now have him actively saying that the mitigating factor of chopping this guy up in the Turkish embassy when he came for a marriage license, it's mitigated by he was an apologist for politics that I disagree with.
Let me just say the mitigating factor is all of the propaganda that his murderer has spread about him. Allow me to repeat it.
Exactly. But as if that in any way implicates the propriety of this guy who was a green card holder in this country.
This man, Khashoggi, was an apologist for jihadists. He was an apologist for the Muslim Brotherhood. He wasn't an American journalist. He was murdered, and that was wrong. But that event occurred on foreign soil. We need to get to the bottom of it. We need to have transparency. But at the end of the day, the idea that Khashoggi was some champion of democracy, he was an apologist for the kinds of people who are in bed with groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Let's hear from Kyle.
I mean, there's just something about that
Let's hear
response.
from Kyle.
He knows.
He just smeared.
But isn't that the most naked sort of just out and out lying that this guy is doing, right? I mean, he knows. There's just no, there's no idea. It's just a grift for this guy.
Well, that was a common response, actually, on the right to Khashoggi's murder. And the thing was, that was, fair enough. I mean, and it's so, first of all, yes, Khashoggi did have some connections with some, right-wing Muslim politics, including his former connections with the leadership of Saudi Arabia, which is where he kind of got his start.
Deserves to die.
Well, and also the other thing is that, the historical button I just want to put on it is that if you wipe out, you eliminate all other political alternatives and only support petro dictatorships and help fund religious extremists, you're going to end up in a situation where religion is the only common modality that people can do politics in a certain place.
And let me just add, the participation, or really, participation may be underselling it a little bit, of what's going on in Yemen by MBS and the Saudis is appalling, but I don't expect Gorka to critique that at all, because of course we're so supportive of it. Now, we should say that at the very least, the House and the Senate did vote to end the funding. They were overridden with a veto. They couldn't override the veto. So at least that there is some mitigation to the horror that we are, or at least to the charge that we are fully behind this. We are fully behind it, but at least there is some dissent in our body politic that doesn't have much value to the people who are dying, but it is at least it's going to make it just so that when God comes down and releases hellfire, maybe not everyone will get burned to a crisp.
Hey.
Don't burn me. I support Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
It looks like somebody called in and said to Gorka what we might want.
Let's hear that. This is the is this a follow-up call right after
about
that?
20 minutes later.
20 minutes later? Good.
Good morning. This is really directed at you, the moderator. We're living in very precarious times. Education for the public is very important. And when I watch C-SPAN, I like to listen to my fellow Americans, the news, the journalists that you have on, the experts that you have on. This morning you have on someone who is a known grifter, propagandist, provocateur. And I don't think he's going to add anything to the body politic in any kind of way, in any kind of positive way. And so I just want to encourage you, just in this very dangerous time where misinformation and disinformation is such a huge problem, that you choose your guests more, thoughtfully. This guy is, he's dangerous, and he likes to be dangerous. He likes to provoke. He doesn't have our best interests at heart. And I don't mind hearing conservative views. I just want them to be accurate, fair, above board. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And we do, as I told the earlier caller, bring guests on from the left and right
Bill,
of the center. And
Bill, this is the left. They want to control information.
Oh my God. She's totally, I mean, obviously she's right, but don't you think Gorka was trying to like lean into his like villain propagandist thing a little bit earlier when he was talking about Khashoggi? Like, this is maybe a message to other journalists that we don't care about freedom of the press.
Oh, of course. And I mean, the aggrievement, they want to control the information by critiquing your guest selection.
They want to give feedback about the information that we give them.
That's crazy. Let's go to the phones as I try and control the information by clicking on the 734 number. I have given you the power, but it's just been leased. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 734. 734. Let's see. Maybe that's not... Calling from a 508 phone number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello? Who's this?
Patty Hurst.
Patty Hurst. Okay.
From Worcester County.
From Worcester County. Okay. And what's on your mind, Patty Hurst?
I listen to your show a lot for free, so I have to say thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Fans in high places.
There you go. Calling, there's an overseas call, I think. What is the 49? 49? It's a country code. Who's this?
Hello, it's me.
Yeah?
Milan from Berlin, Germany.
Milan from Berlin, Germany. What's on your mind?
I wanted to defend Macron a little bit.
Okay.
Boo.
Because I don't really think you can blame him for his policies. Like, his social agenda is pretty much just copying what Germany did at the turn of the century. And they don't really have a choice because we're just beating them in the economy in all phases. And Merkel is stonewalling all reforms on an EU level that Macron basically won the election on. So, yeah, it's pretty much almost Merkel's fault, more or less.
Pretty much America's fault? Oh, Merkel's fault.
Merkel.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I think, you know, getting into what the individual would want to do at any given point, then you know what? Macron should not have run, and he should have just sat this out. If he has no agency whatsoever, then what's the point?
No, Macron has agency, but he can't really do anything in the EU without Germany's approval.
Right.
And Merkel will not do any reforms.
But he doesn't want the types of reforms we would want regardless. And when you say at the turn of the century, you talking about Agenda 2010? Like you talking about Schroeder?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we undercut
So sure, yeah, he's a
else.
third way, but he's the same kind of politician. So that, I mean, We're arguing.
I know,
It is
but
his responsibility, right? It's the same policy agenda.
what I'm trying to say is that it's kind of like a race to the bottom where now France doesn't really have a choice anymore because we're just running away. And
They better
we are
figure
not
out a
willing
choice,
to do them.
or
For
they're
example, the
gonna
wealth tax,
implode.
which they actually did. So the capital just went to our country.
Okay.
I mean,
I don't like Macron. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that the blame really is to put in Germany.
If your fundamental point is that we should hold Germany primarily responsible, certainly as a Jewish person, strong cosign. Also, I mean, but Germany actually, I mean, Germany is the engine of the EU crisis. It's mandated austerity. It's tortured Greece. I mean, yes, absolutely. And I think even though he's, kind of a laughingstock, I think, and turned out to be a pretty bad French president, I think Hollande actually did try a little bit in 12 and 13 to slightly soften Germany's demands on the Eurozone, and Merkel beat him, and yeah, here we are. It is primarily Germany's fault, but Macron is terrible as well.
yeah, these things, it's always a combination of contingency.
Macron in Germany.
And I mean, the way that Macron is imposing neoliberalism and austerity on France to a degree that the people really will not accept. It's always a combination of these overdetermining factors of capitalist development on the one hand and contingency on the other, because you need people to implement the policies. It doesn't just happen by magic. But I think a lot of people in France right now are standing up and saying that that is not tolerable. They're having what could turn out to be like an actual insurrection. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there.
Appreciate the call.
Yes, the French generally are more opposing to order than us Germans, sadly.
Thanks for the call.
Oh, yeah.
Colin
Germans
from-
are much more docile.
Colin from, well, depends the context.
In a certain sense.
Calling from a 347 area code. Who's this?
Hi, how are you? What's going on, Sam?
What's up? Who's this?
It's Ben from Far Rockaway. I don't know if you remember the Orthodox Jew got called a cuck.
Oh, yes. Ben from Far Rockaway. How are you?
Are you an Orthodox cuck?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain too much. I actually wanted to kind of talk to you about what I hope will be a transition from the current healthcare system to something like Medicare for all. I actually work in the healthcare finance field, specifically relating to nursing homes, and I know how complicated the system is currently.
Yeah.
One thing I'm kind of curious to talk about is the transition from the system. There are actually a lot of jobs that are specifically and intrinsically tied to the current healthcare system.
Right.
Do you know of, or are there any, studies or conversations that have been had at the political and, political talk show level about how that transition would actually take place in a way where people won't lose, jobs or have to take massive pay cuts to get another job in the healthcare field that will be taking over?
I've seen studies that basically put the numbers all over the place. And I haven't, to be honest with you, I have not read any pieces in exactly how it would go down. But broadly speaking, my sense is that on the sort of the claims level, on some level, right? A lot of people are going to find work in an expanded Medicare system. It's not inconceivable to me that one of the ways that you could go to a single payer system is to have a single payer and still have the sort of the apparatus that the insurance companies use, but they would end up being, sort of like assumed into a larger system. So they may still, it's conceivable you could still have private entities, but they would be more equivalent to, I guess, mortgage servicers, right, than mortgage originator, or I should say, mortgage servicers as opposed to originators, except for they wouldn't be getting the fees. They wouldn't be for profit, or to the extent that they would, they'd be contracted to to work in the Medicare system. But I would imagine a lot of those people are going to end up working in the Medicare system, and I would imagine there's going to be a greater than zero job loss, but there are programs I think that would be contemplated to help people make a transition out of that.
Yeah, Bernie's Medicare for All plan does have a transition program attached to it.
Hold on, Ben, one sec. Go ahead, Jim.
Bernie's Medicare for All plan actually does have a transition program attached to it for exactly that reason, along with some resources. And if you pair it with a federal jobs guarantee, which is also part of Bernie's platform, it's possible that there are people currently working in the insurance industry for whom that is not their passion. And, maybe it would be a great chance to do something else.
Nobody wants to, not nobody, but I would imagine the number of people who want to lose their job, is greater than zero, who don't want to lose their job. But this is the same problem we're going to have with any type of transition into clean energy. This is the same problem we would have if we cut defense spending, right? So yeah, there's no doubt there's a challenge. There's a part of Bernie's plan that contemplates this. It's not something that would be a huge surprise to people. Look, that was the argument as to why they shouldn't go after a lot of the banks for their fraud. Was literally the argument is we're going to have too many people lose their job. That was, following the shutting down of what was it, Anderson Accounting? I can't remember what the full name was. In the Enron scandal, it was like we're going to have too many people lose their jobs. And there was obviously that was just a criminal case, but there was no program to deal with the thousands of people who lost their job when they went under. But yeah, this happens. There's a proposal for it, but I'll look for a. I think as we go along in the campaign, if the campaign becomes more relevant, we will talk more about it and maybe have somebody on. I would imagine there would be some pieces out there written that would sort of walk through this process. I think it's definitely a real challenge. But again, there's a certain inevitability, and it shouldn't be something that precludes us because nobody likes it. Nobody likes the system. People, to the extent that people are comfortable with the system as it is now, they tend to conflate the insurance with their ability to see their doctors. They also underestimate how often they lose that ability. And they don't realize necessarily how bad their insurance is because of the nature of how often people need to use it.
Oh, absolutely. I understand that completely. The field I actually work in is specifically nursing home finance, which deals with Medicaid and insurances and what it covers, what it doesn't. And I started as a person who had to talk to people about, well, here's your copay bill, or here's the private rate of hundreds and hundreds of dollars a day, and watch them, have to try and work that out. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I agree 100%. I know, 3 years ago, my job, if it would have definitely been cut, I wouldn't have a job. So I do agree that it's something that is necessary for this transition. I like you said, as we get closer, I hope it's something that will be talked about more, because I do think it's something that they're going to try and use as a method of attacking.
I agree. And I agree. And I think that, I would be surprised if we don't see more written about that as this becomes an issue on the campaign. But I appreciate the call. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
This is something I think we mentioned the other day that we were contemplating in the summer of 2016, which is that one of the problems with having Donald Trump win is where the desire, and Weigel said it, if Hillary had won, I'd be at brunch right now, type of thing. There has been, at least in my lifetime, over and over again, this sort of same thing plays out. I remember when Bill Clinton got elected. I think it was there to a certain extent with Obama, but less so because of the 2008 financial crisis. But there is this compulsion with Democrats, broadly the left, to elect people, have them be competent, and so that I can walk away and do other things. It is almost endemic to the personality type of, broadly speaking, I'm painting with a broad brush here, left and right, because, I mean, to be on the left, to be liberal, and I think the vast majority of people on the left are liberal still in this country. I would identify that way, and I'm talking more big liberal, big L, rather than just sort of a specific political ideology.
Ideas.
But they are interested in things like music and art and stuff that they don't know, and that what is foreign. They're more open to it. That is just the nature. The conservative movement in this country is completely built on this idea of anything that's outside of you have ignorance of, is necessarily a danger in some fashion. And they've been very successful at stoking that. But on the left, broadly speaking, you have a hunger to be introduced to new things and do other things, a wide variety of things. And how your government works tends to be a minor piece of that. And so I just want it to work, and I don't want to deal with this hassle, as opposed to on the right, where it's like the gay Muslim socialists are going to, take us over if I'm not constantly vigilant. And, I call this like a Masada complex. And I think that dynamic is here, and it seems to be somewhat inevitable. And that's why, like this, I think it's early, and I think it's very sort of knee-jerky, and I have a feeling it's going to go away a little bit. This, like, Biden also represents just a return to, I think, people like, it's just going to be like Obama. Like, let's just go back to like Obama, and that's fine. We were so, we didn't fully appreciate it, or we did appreciate it. I just want to go back. And I think, I don't know, I guess I raised that only because I hope that we end up talking about, I hope we end up having extended conversations about how Medicare for all will be implemented, because that's important to the campaign, but it's conceivable that it won't be.
Well, this is why we need to reach more people with, even though it's like not always easy to wrap your mind around, the connections and the reasons why the kind of Obama liberalism led to the problems that we're seeing now and led to the rise of Trump. And just doubling down on that is only going to make things worse. And like, I realize it's a difficult connection to make, and it sounds kind of esoteric, even when I'm saying it right now, but there are concrete ways of showing it. Even just like, if you look at the statistics of how poor people, by and large, do not vote. Non-voters skew poor, and they skew non-white because class is very racialized in this country. And when they do vote, they vote for Democrats. So one way to get more people voting for Democrats is to lift more people out of poverty. And Obama's policies did not do that. Right.
No, I mean, I agree. I just think that the mentality of a lot of voters are that, like, I mean, I think people in general, regardless of what we're talking about, have trouble planning, and doing something today that has implication. I mean, this came up with Weigel too. Like, there are some people who are like, we need to make a vote. We need to vote for a president in 2020 who's not just going to win, but who's going to have, create a durable type of feedback loop where they provide material benefit and create political strength so that we're in good shape in 2024, in 2028, in 2022, in 2026. But most people, can't make, an appointment and keep it 3 months out. So, I mean, the problem is that long-term strategic thinking is not there. And on some level, like, even the pitch that things are this important and this problematic, that if you don't make this choice, it's going to be problematic down the road, is on some level, I think, and maybe this has changed, And I think it's changed to a certain extent, certainly with younger people, because they see the implications. Like, they can see the implications of this stuff in a way that I think older people can't. But that in and of itself, just the idea that like, oh, you're talking to me about being engaged in politics 4 years from now, even if Trump wins, that's annoying. And I don't want to even think about that. I want to be able to walk away. I mean, it's sort of like there's a quality of it, like, don't think of an elephant. When you start to talk about politics as something that is not something that you just involve yourself in for a brief period of time in moments of crisis, that in and of itself sometimes becomes a turnoff to people. It's like, I got enough in my life, either from a hassle standpoint or in terms of like, that make it enriching, that I don't want to deal with that. And
I'm not asking people to like join the DSA or whatever, although they definitely should do that. I'm asking them to vote. It doesn't take that long, and vote strategically.
Well, the strategically part now involves like, now I got to do work.
I have to say that my brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.
Here is Khanna actually talking about the transition for health insurance workers, and makes a case for Medicare for all that, I mean, there was evidence that we saw this even in the context of the Affordable Care Act, which only affected 10 million Americans in terms of private insurance. There's 10 million on Medicaid, 10 million in private insurance. There was, in the data, some job loss that was a function of people being freed up from employer-based insurance. And here is Khanna mentioning that. He is the national campaign co-chair for Bernie.
It's a huge transition. The insurance industry is $1.7 trillion. It employs 500,000 people. Bernie Sanders' plan allows still for supplemental private insurance, if you read the details of the plan, and we have to figure out how we make this transition. But I think
you raise a good point, though, and I respect you for bringing it up yourself, which is it has become one of the top 2 or 3, if not the, depending on which metric you want to look at, main employers in the country. So when you say, hey, this is going to mean that government will absorb more of this, there'll be less private sector, you could wind up costing people jobs.
Well, the transition is very important, and people can work in numerous other ways. They can help administer Medicare. They can help work in other healthcare jobs that are going to be created with telemedicine. I think the transition is very important, and anyone honest has to look at that. But the basic point is, and you know who agreed with the single-payer system? Donald Trump. In the America We Deserve in 2000, he wrote that the Canadian system is better because it gives more benefits and it has less cost. And the average American, here's what it's going to mean. Instead of paying $5,000 to a private insurance company on average, now you're going to pay a much smaller fee. And who's going to lose out? The insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. And you're going to get to keep your doctor and have better care. I believe many entrepreneurs, Warren Buffett has talked about Medicare for all. It's the single biggest cause for wage stagnation. Vice President Biden is absolutely right. Middle-class wages have stagnated. If you talk to economists, the reason for wage stagnation is the rising healthcare premiums. Employers have been giving their money to healthcare costs as opposed to raising wages. And this is why we have to make the economic argument for Medicare for all.
Well, it will be interesting. Obviously, you're going to have to find ways to make this all digestible for the American people, deal with the opposition in party, and see if you get the ticket to take it to the president. And we'll watch it all along the way. And Congressman, you are invited here to make the case when you can.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I'll tell Senator Sanders he should come on, too.
Well, it was really good to see those guys get along at the end. But no, that is the argument. And, I think clearly the transition for those 500,000 workers needs to be worked out. I would imagine, it wouldn't surprise me if half of them or, a little bit less, 40% of them found work on day one in Medicare. You're still dealing with a tremendous amount of workers, but There are contingencies in the plan to deal with retraining, and maybe I'm underestimating. The issue. When we compare the efficiency of Medicare to that of private insurance, and every dollar spent in Medicare, something like 96 to 97 cents of that dollar goes towards health care. 3%, 4% goes towards administration costs. On the private health insurance, we had to mandate that 80% of the money taken in for premium pay goes to healthcare. So you have 20% there, and it's not obviously administrative costs. It's also a profit. Shareholders, you're not going to have that. And so you have that greater efficiency in Medicare, but that doesn't mean that you don't need bodies in there to actually administer this. And you're still going to need people who are going to evaluate claims in some fashion. It's not going to work in the same way. It's going to be much easier from a user perspective. It's going to be easier from the perspective of the doctors because they're going to be dealing with one entity. They're not going to be dealing with like 12 sets of rules, I just remember the amount of time that went into with the doctor's office. And it's conceivable, doctor's offices, you will see job loss because there's at least a person in a doctor's office who is full-time doing all these billing things. And the billing is going to become sufficiently easier. You're going to have doctors with more time. They're going to be able to see more patients because they're not going to be filling out the same type of information. So there's going to be a lot of change in the system. Some of it is going to be a challenge, and other of it's going to be just, I think people would be shocked at how much simpler and easier things are. And I think doctors are going to appreciate their work a lot more.
And I think if we take the people that are in charge of going up to a family saying, hey, we'll save your kid if you can pay the $700 bill, I think might appreciate moving on to a different line of work than that.
Yeah, has anyone actually asked the healthcare workers themselves, all these people who are concern trolling about the job loss? I'm going to guess no. And you know what? Neither have I. But I'm going to guess at least some of them will be happy that they now have affordable health care that they don't have to worry about constantly. And I'm also going to guess, unless you are a sociopath, you probably don't like denying care to people and delivering bad news. So this is something that's tougher to quantify. But going back to David Graeber's bullshit jobs, I think most people want their jobs to be contributing something to society and to the world. And I know that I would much rather have a job just helping people get the care that they need and that they can now afford than, adjusting claims and denying people care for whatever reason.
Turning to foreign policy, this week we have, according to John Bolton, dispatched a carrier fight group. I imagine down to the Straits of Hormuz. Is that where is it? I'm not exactly sure where it's going.
I think it's the block, the Strait of Hormuz, which is where this prime oil flow point.
And this, of course, is an incredibly aggressive move. This is the way that Iranians get their oil out of their country. And the U.S. is going, I don't know if it's to block or if it's just to hang around and see what happens. But that level of belligerence is, could be the predicate to some type of war or bombing with Iran, or perhaps it is a predicate to some proxy bombing Iran. And our positioning there is to basically do one of those things where it's
This is even worse. They're actually saying that it's a deterrence from what is seen as a potential preparation by Iranian forces and its proxies that may indicate possible attacks on U.S. forces in the region, which is incredibly dishonest and dangerous. This is like when they made the Republican National Guard a terrorist group. They did that, they determined a couple of months ago. That was incredibly provocative. And Iran, in response, said that all U.S. forces in the region are a terrorist force, essentially, as a kind of like tit for tat.
Well, and
but
once
the truth is, they've been playing near each other, at times targeting each other, at times informally cooperating for years. So nothing is different. Anybody that would kind of put reporting forward on some type of new, like, Lebanon 1980s scenario is lying.
Well, first off, the idea that Iran would pick a fight with the United States is absurd. It's just simply absurd. But more importantly, recall that, like you said, when we designated the Iranian Guard a terrorist organization, one of the things that people were concerned about is, does that mean under the AUMF, which is the Authorization for Use of Military Force, which was signed in the wake of 9/11, which allows for a far too much power in the executive to wage war amongst far too many people, but specifically terror groups. This could be a predicate to opening up a legal justification for kinetic energy, or whatever they call it, in a war on Iran. So this is disturbing. Matt Duss from Bernie Sanders' team.
I mean, this is Barbara Starr from CNN, credulously reporting I mean,
well, wait a second. Barbara Starr is not credulously reporting anything. She is
it's repeating something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, Barbara Starr was part of the Bush administration in pushing this stuff in many respects. And Barbara Starr repeats, Justin, U.S. officials, wonder who, tell me the threats from Iran included, quote, specific and credible intelligence that Iranian forces and proxies were targeting U.S. forces in Syria, Iraq, and at sea. There were multiple threads of intelligence about multiple locations, the officials said. #Iran. And Matt Duss said Bolton has a well-documented history of misrepresenting intel to justify escalation, and the administration is desperate to change the subject after taking a pie in the face in Venezuela, but okay. And I think Matt Duss is right about that. One of the other things that they're doing to avoid a pie in the face is also getting into a trade fight with China. And this, again, you know, Donald Trump has I think a sort of a built-in almost knee-jerk response to losing something and to feeling like he's being humiliated by starting up, another squabble somewhere else. It's almost childlike in many respects. Like, I'm going to get attention even if it's for doing bad things. And here's Mike Pompeo going on Face the Nation to talk about we're getting tough with China. And which, you know, I think we're probably getting tough in all the things that I least care about, and getting not so tough in the things that I do care about. And this Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation brings up some of the things that I would care about that we were getting tough on China, and that is really almost offensive to Mike Pompeo. And he won't say certain words. Can you come up with what words he won't say in this conversation? And I'll give maybe a little hint, but go.
We heard from a Pentagon official on Friday a pretty stark description of what is underway right now in China. He said that there are 3 million Muslims being rounded up into concentration camps in China. Why hasn't the administration taken any...
3 million Muslims round up into concentration camps. Contemplate that. That is a horror. Listen to how much Mike Pompeo does not want to repeat what the Defense Department has said.
Why hasn't the administration taken any kind of action or sanction against Beijing for this?
Oh, goodness. President Trump has pushed back against China in a way that no previous president had. They had given the Chinese a free pass in every dimension. President Trump is now pushing back on the enormous trade abuses. You've seen me personally speak out about the same situation that you're describing. This number, certainly up to 1 million people held in re-education camps. The Trump administration is going to hold every nation.
Did you see what he just did there?
He tried.
3 million people from a concentration camp just turned into 1 million people in a re-education camp. And the amazing thing is, he thinks that's a mitigating. Oh, it's just a re-education camp. Oh, okay, just a re-education camp. Of course.
His mitigation switched to their state terminology. It's not just that. It wasn't even. That's a term that they would tend to use.
Getting tough on China. Go ahead.
Certainly up to 1 million people held in re-education camps. The Trump administration is going to hold every nation accountable.
You're okay with that term, re-education camps, not concentration camps, which the Pentagon used?
We can use lots of different terms to describe what's taking place. This is enormous human rights violations. I've spoken about it repeatedly.
Why
the entire administration has spoken out it repeatedly.
You just said 1 million minorities.
Yeah.
The Pentagon says 3 million. Yeah. Is there a discrepancy within the administration on what to do about this and what's actually happening?
There's not. Don't play ticky-tack. There's no discrepancy. This administration,
concentration camps is a loaded term, sir, and 3 million Muslims being rounded up is something that many would expect the United States to raise at the highest levels.
And we've done so.
So
it sounds like you're satisfied with that, well, right? We've done so, right? And so don't make.
Expect that? Because the accusation, as you know, sir, is that the trade talks are causing the U.S. to choose its own financial interests over its values. Are you saying that's not the case and there will be actions taken?
Thanks for the clarification of your question. I appreciate that. This administration can do more than one thing at a time. We're working to stop the intellectual property theft that has destroyed millions of jobs in the United States. We're working to stop the foreign technology forced technology transfers that have taken place. We've got the largest defense budget in history in place, part of which will go to ensuring we counter Chinese military power. We're working on these human rights violations as well. This administration takes a backseat to no one in our
that feeling when you get asked about a concentration camp with 3 million people, and you talk about we're protecting the rights of Hollywood filmmakers to not have their DVDs copied.
Well, I'll tell you what, we won't let those fucking Chinese bastards do another friggin' bootleg.
Keep pirating Ableton Live.
Yeah, Kung Fu.
Red Dead Letter, not this time.
Yeah,
not under this administration.
Kung Fu Hustle 2 is not going to be on a street corner in Bushwick again.
Well, he doesn't want to be a hypocrite considering that the U.S. government also has concentration camps.
Yeah.
We're working on these human rights violations as well. This administration takes a backseat to no one in our efforts and our outcomes in achieving a more rational relationship with China. The previous administration put us in a bad place, and we're working to fix it.
Were you just saying human rights are going to be included in the trade deal?
No, human rights are going to be addressed, and we've done so. I've raised it in multiple conversations with my counterpart, their foreign minister, and with others.
I've said the words, and how are we backing that up? You better not be making those knockoff DVDs.
So Mike raised it, and I pushed back. What more do you want us to do about it?
It was raised and pushed back both, which that's a lot of things.
We did the raise and the pushback.
It was
we did both.
It was a raise and a push.
But no, it's not going to come up in the trade talks at all. No.
Wow.
Can't.
Whoa.
No.
You got to sell some soy.
Mike, do you have hypertension? Very touchy with the interview.
Speaking of concentration camps, and to be fair, these are not concentration camps that are housing migrant children. They are just large open-air prisons. That because concentration would imply that you have gathered people from around the country and put them in, as opposed to sort of like just arresting them at the border and shoving them in the.
ICE does arrest people all over the country.
That's true, but they don't put them in these child detention centers. Now, you'll recall there was a large expansion of child detention centers under the Trump administration, largely under the auspices of John Kelly. Now, John Kelly was the adult who was brought in to curb Donald Trump's most heinous impulses. And of course, he was one of those Republicans who was an adult. And adult Republicans, that's what they're good for. They're good for corralling the crazies in their own party. And as much as John Kelly had to sort of pretend that he was all on board with this huge program of kidnapping children and taking them from their parents, or expanding the unaccompanied minor children, a definition, and a number of people that we were housing, in parentheses. And the way that we expanded the definition was to take children from their parents and then define them as unaccompanied, as opposed to children who show up at the border without their parents. And we expanded the population of these people within our prison systems by basically scaring any of their relatives who in this country might pick them up and take care of them during any type of judicial process that would determine these kids' fate. Now, one might ask, like, wow, this is a real burden on the government. Well, of course it's not, because we just pay other people to do it. Now, of course, it's a burden on the taxpayer, but we privatize these institutions. In fact, there's one company, Caliburn International. Caliburn is the parent company of Comprehensive Health Services, which operates the Homestead facility in Homestead, Florida. This is and 3 other shelters for unaccompanied migrant children in Texas. In fact, they're the biggest company that does so. They almost have a monopoly on this.
Could they have a more Orwellian name?
Comprehensive Health Services is the only private company operating shelters, and it became one of the most dominant players in the industry. Last August, it secured 3 licenses for facilities in Texas, totaling 500 beds, and in December, the Homestead facility began expanding from a capacity of 1,250 beds to 3,200. They received federal contract records show the Comprehensive received at least $222 million to operate Homestead itself between July 7th, 2018 and April 20th, 2019. So that's one of 4 facilities. It's the biggest one that gets $222 million to operate over the course of 1 year, not even 1 year, 10 months. And could receive much more, up to $341 million in payments between now and November. Now being
not a bad business.
May and November for continued operation of the expanded site. Boy, how do these guys do it? Where do they get the technical expertise or the ability to secure this money from the government? One can only want, oh, what's this? On Friday, Caliburn International confirmed to CBS News that John Kelly, former White House Chief of Staff and Republican adult, had joined its board of directors. Nice gig if you can get it. Create a program to increase client base. That's what they call them. They're all clients.
The market share.
And then go walk on that board. And now I'm sure there's a lot of work he does. He was just spotted riding around on a golf cart on the facility. That probably takes a day. I mean, a board of directors, typically, my understanding is, you will have 3 to 4 meetings that you must attend in a probably fairly nice retreat area where you get to hobnob with your friends or other business folk for a day or 2. They fly you in, they put you up, they pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars per meeting that you attend, and you sign off on stuff. I'm sure he's making sure. I'm sure he's doing a lot of due diligence. You guys making sure that these kids are taken care of.
Ethics. That's the number one word I'm concerned about.
Exactly. During a tour in February, a program coordinator at Homestead told CBS News that the older children prefer cavernous digs because this is a halls shared by as many as 200 17-year-old boys in rows of beds about shoulder width apart. The program coordinator told CBS that they like it. They say it's like a slumber party.
Are you kidding me?
So there you go, folks.
That
It's
is
like
so grotesque.
a slumber party.
High on the hill was a lonely goat herd, lay, hoodle-lay, hoodle-lay.
That's the sound of the swamp being drained.
If only there was some way we could have guessed he was horrible.
Yeah, we
I'm
could
so
have
surprised.
never. You could have. There's very little on the public record to suggest that this is an obscene human being.
Unbelievable.
This was from the
Not unbelievable.
the Coast Guard graduation.
I was going to say there's certainly things not like this on the public record indicating where this guy was coming
This
from.
is Kelly at the Coast Guard graduation ceremony in 2017. Trump has a sword.
Trump has a sword. He's been given a sword. He sits down next to Kelly. Kelly leans over. Use that on the presser. Yeah. Guys. Good stuff. Really good stuff.
You're going to get a job now.
Meanwhile, we spoke with Dave Weigel about Joe Biden on the campaign trail. And Bernie Sanders was on with John Carl on ABC this week. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, the two front runners, although it's Elizabeth Warren is starting to pick up some attention on in the polls too. And again, it is very, very early. But here is Bernie comparing his approach to Joe Biden's approach.
I'm sure you saw Joe Biden say that he is the most progressive candidate in this race.
Well, look, Joe is a good friend of mine, and I'm not here to attack Joe. Joe voted for the war in Iraq. I led the effort against it. Joe voted for NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations, trade agreements with China. I led the effort against that. Joe voted for the deregulation of Wall Street. I voted against that. I think if you look at Joe's record and you look at my record, I don't think there's much question about who's more progressive.
And
I like Bernie's really, man. He's so committed this time because that face was just like, oh, okay, this is where I'm not at a delicatessen or the food co-op.
Bit of a disingenuous question, don't you think?
Bit disingenuous, but look, Joe is a good friend of mine. That's what
Right.
everybody says in these situations. And now PNTR, Iraq, credit cards, or I could just say, are you fucking kidding me?
Here is Bernie comparing his approach to Biden's in that same interview with John Carl on ABC this week on Sunday.
Well, one of those issues, obviously, is your proposal for Medicare for all. Biden says that he would like to see a more incremental approach, fix Obamacare, provide a Medicare option for anybody, but allow people to still have private health insurance if they want. Why not do an approach like that?
I'll tell you why. Because the system today is truly dysfunctional. We are spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other country. Medicare right now is the most popular health insurance program in the country, but it only applies to people 65 years of age or older. All that I want to do is expand Medicare over a 4-year period to cover every man, woman, and child in this country.
But to do that, you would eliminate private health insurance.
For basic needs, yes.
So what do you say to the firefighter in Iowa who has a health plan that they like?
What I would say is that if you want a better program, a more comprehensive program, with no deductibles, with no copayments, with no premiums, which will cost your family less, support Medicare for all.
But there are some trade-offs, aren't there? I mean,
Pause it for 1 second.
That's a clear
First of all, there's a couple of things that's interesting about this so far. One, only firefighters care about their health insurance. And
first responders.
Sort of a fascinating thing. The people who provide that health insurance would probably be a government in some fashion. But nevertheless, it's also interesting to see that Bernie is not pushing, which I think is smart. And I don't know if it's how much of a change. It's a slight one. He is not making a big argument that this is the elimination of private insurance. He is now sort of saying for the basic stuff, which of course is the point. There's always this notion of a supplemental. And I think there's no reason to make this about eliminating private insurance as much as there is a reason to make private insurance obsolete. And that is a distinction with a difference. Because the agenda should not be to get rid of private insurance. Who cares? It should make it irrelevant. And if there are people who want to go out, like, you know, I don't think you should have a fur sink. It seems impractical. But if you really want one, and that's the way you want to spend your money, God be with you. Now, I don't think we should have allow for so much wealth that people can buy a lot of fur sinks. But if you want to get one, be my guest. Continue.
Premiums, which will cost your family less, support Medicare for all.
But there are some trade-offs, aren't there? I mean, are people going to be able to see the doctor? Can you make that guarantee?
Absolutely.
Like Obama, you'll be able to keep your doctor.
Like, wait, this is the strangest question to me. We're talking about getting rid of insurance. If you're providing health insurance for, I don't know, let's just say 92% of the people in this country. The other 8%, they'll take the Medicare, but then they'll get their supplemental insurance so they can go see their doctor. There's not enough of those people to support this huge new medical industry. First of all, they're already getting concierge doctors. They're already, that has already almost been sorted out. But let's say you have more defectors from the Medicare system. And as consumers, as patients of medicine, there's so many suppliers that's going to support. So this idea that the vast majority of doctors, or even a significant minority of doctors, would opt out of the system is bizarre. The doctors aren't going away. They're all going to be there. And because you have a uniform system, as opposed to, this is the problem with the Affordable Care Act. It's because you're having it compete against other private insurers, and you're having these private insurers try and determine what is going to be the least expensive for them. And so they're the ones who are narrowing this stuff. This is why it happens. But the doctors aren't going to disappear. It's actually going to make it less likely you will lose your doctor because the doctor doesn't have that many options anymore. They can't opt out and just take one, insurance or another. Like, I could not go see, when I got my colonoscopy last year, I couldn't see the doctor that I saw the last time because my insurance would no longer pay for the anesthesiologist that apparently the doctor wanted to bring in so that he could do more business. And I had to go to a different doctor.
And isn't basically everyone in America familiar with that dynamic too? I think people are, but they don't know what to attribute it to more often than not. And they know they don't like it. So they don't want to be, if this, like, even the question implies that that's going to happen. It's like, if I was to ask Bernie, like, with this Medicare for all, I mean, how concerned would you be that people are going to have an anvil fall on their head when they go into the doctors? And as absurd as that premise is, if I say that enough, people are going to be like, wait, what's this whole thing with the anvil dropping on your head when you go into the doctor's office? I don't want that. And I know he keeps saying it's not going to happen, but why do they keep asking the question? There must be something to it.
Also, why doesn't anyone ever ask Joe Biden why he favors an incremental approach to insurance? Like, I feel like the only people who ever get asked this question are the Medicare for all people, right? And it's especially galling considering the incremental approach has already been tried very recently and it hasn't gone that well.
I mean, people like it better than it was before. But, all right, let's continue.
But there are some trade-offs, aren't there? I mean, are people going to be able to see the doctor? Can you make that guarantee?
Absolutely.
Like Obama, you'll be able to keep your doctor?
Absolutely. Look, the truth is right now, you may have an insurance plan that the doctor you really like is not on that network.
Well, what if everybody wants to see Dr. Sanders here in Des Moines, and there's more people?
Well, that's the same problem you have today. You have a very popular.
There have got to be trade-offs, though, right?
But that's, look, if you have a popular doctor right now under your current policy,
He literally just mentioned one thing that would not, like, No, single payer and having this healthcare system will not eliminate the problem of relative popularity in an overbooked practice. That's true.
John Carl, that question, like, there's got to be trade-offs. You know what that question communicates to me? Like, I don't know this stuff enough.
But I know you're wrong.
No.
It's I need to sound challenging.
Yeah. Can you give me, like, I'm asking you for the critique because I don't quite have it.
That's another thing that's just really unfair and doctrinaire about Bernie Sanders, which is that he won't present dishonest criticisms of his own policies in national television.
But he does get out in front of the critiques. He always says, like, taxes will go up. He totally preempts that.
Right. I mean, and that's that's what Carl should have started with that, I guess. And that's probably why he doesn't. Go ahead.
Well, what if everybody wants to see Dr. Sanders here in Des Moines, and there's more people?
Well, that's the same problem you have today. If you have a very popular,
there have got to be trade-offs, though, right?
But that's, look, if you have a popular doctor right now under your current policy, it may take you a while to get in there.
Look, Carl, I was a big fan of the free school,
but understand what could also be underneath that question, which is really, on some level, the deeply ideological problem with this.
Right.
Because, and that is, you're going to give everybody access to Dr. Sanders. And now the way we sort that out is a lot of people can't afford to see Dr. Sanders.
I get to because I'm a TV host.
Yes, but if you make the popular doctors accessible to everyone, then how do we sort this stuff out is who deserves to see Dr. Sanders?
Yeah, people...
Are we really going to just let this go to chance? I mean, when some of us have earned more money and have proven our moral wealth and our moral deservedness to see Dr. Sanders, and you're just going to willy-nilly let anybody come in? That is, and I don't know if that's the way John Carl meant that, because the answer is obvious. Like, wait a second, popular doctors are hard to see. That happens now. But underneath that, and I don't know if that was John Carl's intention or certainly, but that is part of the criticism. I mean, like, this is what we've heard from, like, hardcore libertarians are the only ones who will basically articulate it. But it does drive this. It's that you're going to give, like, for them, this is the bug. What is the feature for people who want Medicare for all is sort of the bug for the right, and they can't quite articulate that because that makes them look like heartless human beings.
We have a great system that prices the poor out without us needing to do it hands-on.
Exactly. We can keep the riffraff out of here. We don't need to put a sign that says no riffraff.
But we have moral deniability. We have a plausible deniability, right? Exactly.
Yeah, people act like care is not already being rationed by the market, and it is.
Of course.
That's 100, right? Exactly, and also that, and as other people point out, that
but it's being rationed. It's being rationed with the rationale, because when you care, when care is rationed, but when a system everybody has access to it, that gets a little bit like, what's the logic behind that? There's no.
It's actually funny because
no
but for these
to work hard.
centrist types or whatever you want to call them, it's like. That's another reason why Obamacare works for them so well, because, it's one thing to go complete sociopathic and just like, you don't get to have health care, but it's another to be like, healthcare should be like air travel, like,
right. Exactly.
Sure. So I'm not saying that I want these people to just die, but I should have a much better experience, be more highly prioritized.
Listen,
because it's another consumer
there's only so many
product.
seats up in first class.
That's exactly.
And
No, that's
if they
the
were all
ideological
the same price,
appeal.
I mean, how would you?
Well,
that's the ideological.
It's people that are threatened by the concept of your money is no good here. And I went to when I was in France a year ago. I had an issue with the person I was with had to go to the hospital, got IV treatments, got a bunch of tests done. We were there for like 12 hours in a hospital bed. And when we left, we're like, is there a bill we have to sign or anything like that? Nothing. They're just like, see ya. And that was an amazing experience. And there's certain people that want to be able to walk into a hospital room and make sure they can get like a nicer room or get in, cut lines because they've used to it with a certain type of insurance.
That's exactly right.
That's a threat to them.
That's exactly right. And it's so funny how some of those people metabolize like going and seeing a system like that in France. And they're just sort of like, or isn't that interesting? And I get to take vacations and see that because I've worked so hard.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam. Hi, it's Mindy. How are you?
Mindy!
I have something so important to add to this conversation.
Okay.
How are you? I have a really bad deviated septum and my nose is collapsing.
Oh, geez.
Not bad. I mean,
sorry to hear that.
I mean, it's noticeable to me. Anyway, I've been shopping around for doctors, and my dogs are barking because somebody's here. But I've been shopping around for doctors. So I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area.
Right.
So I started to go to. I had an interview with a really good guy at Jefferson, and then I had another appointment with a guy at Penn, and my copay was top 3 tier, so each appointment was $80. So I had 3 appointments. So every time I go, it's $80, which I'm already into it for $240, which is sad. I mean, because you have to think about it. I mean, $240 to go to see a doctor is bad, but also, neither of the offices, like the 2 big ones at Penn and Jefferson, completely vacant. There were maybe 30 seats. There were 2 people in there, my husband and I, and maybe another person in there. And the doctors, they used to go through the appointments 5 minutes they would see with their hand on the door. I mean, both times, the guy at Penn spent an hour with me, an entire hour. And he said he had to go, almost toward, the end of it. And he said, my next appointment just canceled so I can spend more time with you. I have a really complicated issue on my nose. Anyway, the point
Wait.
The point, what?
Go ahead.
The point I'm trying to say, did you hear me?
The point you're trying to say?
The point I'm trying to say is that these doctors are hurting with the medical insurance now. There's nobody in their waiting rooms. The only people that were in the hospitals both times that I saw were either cancer patients going for, cancer dialysis patients or pregnant girls. I mean, there were nobody seeing doctors. People are not going to I don't know. I just know my friends aren't going to doctors because it's expensive. But, I mean, it's real. The system that we have now is awful.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Well, I appreciate
Exactly. Single payer.
Thank you, Mindy. Appreciate it. Check out Mindy's blog. She's got memes up there.
Fix the nose right up real fast. Jesus Christ, Carl, you're a fucking moron.
Let's go to some IMs here.
Read the political piece on Bernie's public access show from the 80s. It's amazing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Do we have any of the footage from that? We
Okay,
never played?
Bernie interviewing goths at the mall has got to be my favorite thing I've seen this week.
How did we not pull any of
Bernie being so on point.
That's a Jamie pick right there.
All right, wait. No. Let's play the Kudlow first. Larry Kudlow, I don't know what this was. If this was this feels to me like he's
just doing well,
like a set piece. This does not feel like it was an interview with reporters. It seems like it was a set piece that they were looking to release.
Trying to go viral.
Trying to go viral with this. Because the news doesn't do the soft focus in the back. Do you notice that? The background soft focus. He's come out. It's almost like an ad for the economy, if you will. And look, I've been in show business myself. I've had to do some performing. Sometimes you get a little bit uptight before you go on. Sometimes, and look, a lot of professionals will look down on this, but sometimes you like to lubricate yourself a little bit. I'm not talking physically or manually. I'm talking in terms of psychologically.
Mentally and spiritually?
Yeah, you might have a drink. You might have a drink or something like that. Something with a little CBD oil or something like that to loosen up.
I don't think that this is CBD oil.
Yeah, I'm just talking about my own personal experience.
Right. Maybe a Gatorade.
Something like that, or
electrolytes,
or alcohol.
Gotta get the
alcohol. I knew people who would occasionally have a little sip. In fact, the guy who played the Avengers, the Avenger original, the guy who played Michael Steele, British guy. I can't remember his name now. And I did a sitcom with him, actually. He was, and he would...
You're British. I'm Jewish. Let's
would...
hijinks ensue.
No, we didn't have that type of dynamic. You wouldn't understand. Anyways,
That's
he
right.
would,
I have a very
he would lubricate
simple
himself. But anyways, I don't know what makes me think of that, but here's Larry Kudlow.
Wow. Low unemployment, high jobs, high wages, big consumer confidence, major productivity, and no inflation. It's totally awesome. We're killing it on the economy.
It's a little bit of his MSNBC days with Kramer. You know what it reminds me of, though, is let's take a look at some used car salesman ads, because that's, I think, where you get that technique at its pinnacle.
Meet you today at Glen Grant Chevrolet in Berrien. Hi, this is Low Profit Glenn from Glen Grant Chevrolet, and I'm here to shoot down high prices. The 84s are almost here, so every remaining new car and truck will go for $399 over invoice, and we show you the invoice.
There you go.
That's a pretty cool ad.
Kind of reminded
I will
me
replaying
of,
that to make fun of it because I don't really get it.
No, the idea was that
there
there was.
It's totally awesome. We're killing it on the economy.
It's totally awesome.
$399 over invoice. We can deliver it tomorrow.
He looks really healthy.
Totally awesome.
It's
Trump
totally
steaks.
awesome. I did the economy. It's so good.
It's totally awesome.
So good.
All right,
They
one
gave
more
me
phone
money
call.
And my dad money and all the money.
Last phone call of the day.
It's
Call from the
1980s.
It's been on
Hello.
hold for over an hour. Calling from a 701 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Melody. I'm calling from North Dakota.
And what's on your mind? North Dakota call.
I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a worker walkout happening at Riot Games today. They are fighting sexual harassment, and the company is trying to make all sexual assault cases, go to arbitration rather than courts.
Riot Games is a.
So there is.
I wasn't familiar with it, but it's a game developer, video game developer.
Yes. Big one. They make a game called League of Legends.
I see. And are you trying to add bias into this reporting of video games?
No, I actually don't play the game.
Oh, all right.
I just thought it was interesting, worker solidarity and stuff.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I mean, I
Bring it
don't know
up.
if you remember Gamergate. That was what Gamergate was about. Was the
It actually was not. It was basically proto-Nazi.
Yes, it was.
It
You
was
voted
about
so Gamergate.
it was about ethics.
How dare
in
you?
Video game reporting.
I loved Gamergate, and I did all the memes.
And somehow,
and I remember
somehow
H.
they
John
always
Benjamin
targeted
and I.
women and trans people. I don't
No.
know why.
That's
What?
a lie.
No, I know. I'm being facetious.
No.
But I do appreciate the yes. I hadn't spent that much time talking about the ethics in game reviews.
We do need to make video game developers all Marxists, so that's a good place to radicalize.
Video games are
they're
incredibly
trying to-
popular, so
sorry.
we really can't be ceding that territory to the right.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Appreciate the phone call.
You have
They're
them,
trying to
losers.
unionize. So thank you.
All right, solidarity, riot game.
Solidarity.
Oh wait, speaking of which, let's play that video, the Dave Rubin one. Somebody put together a video. Matt will tell me that, and it's super funny, but it's also like I'm getting more and more intrigued with the Twitch stream world. One, because like I feel like I'm on the cusp of returning home to video games. I was actually at a kid's birthday party where they had a Space Invaders, which of course was the first, after Pong, the first game that they had in the thing. And here is, it seems to be, this is by NF, right? I don't know who this who published it or put it together or what, but it's on the site NF, and it starts off with the video of the guy at the college asking Dave Rubin, who's sitting next to Charlie Kirk, and now Candace Owens apparently has left Turning Points, if he would have a debate with me. Now I want to make something absolutely clear. I'm not looking to have a debate necessarily with Dave Rubin. I just want to sit down with him and have a conversation about ideas. And, other people assume it will be a debate. For all I know, Dave will agree with my ideas or he won't. I mean, he'll question them, but that's not a debate. I'm not debating him. We just want to have a conversation, exchange ideas, because Dave is, for those of you cynics out there and and that Dave is interested in ideas. And of course, Dave and I think from what I sense from Dave's response, that he disagrees with me. And he loves to talk to people who disagree with him. So I know this is going to happen, but people are pretty shocked about it, apparently, on Twitch streams. Here we go.
Rubin, when are you going to debate Sam Seder on the Majority Report?
Oh, I'm not going to debate Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty.
That he tweeted yesterday, which I responded to, was that Dave Rubin is right not to have Sam Seder on, because if he did, Sam Seder would do so poorly that the left would say, you had a weak leftist on. And I was like, that's a really, that just doesn't make any sense.
Unbelievably stupid. Imagine how lost you are to think Dave Rubin would win a debate against Sam Seder. I can't even imagine.
Wait, what? Dave Rubin won't debate Sam Seder?
Dave Rubin won't debate Sam Seder.
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 Sam Seder is a debating god who makes Dave Rubin make poo-poo in his pants.
Why are you so afraid, Dave? And then we come back on a Club of Us, but that was fun. I don't know. I'm like so intrigued by that world.
Yeah, I don't know much about it either. I think those were all Twitch streamers.
Yeah.
I know Destiny and Pac-Man were the first two talking, but
is that Destiny?
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
I have no idea what any of this is.
I don't either. But I mean, see,
Sam
now you know
Saber?
what I feel like about with like 90% of what you talk about. It's just that there's just a much wider range of stuff that I have no idea what people are talking about. And so this is, in some respects, less intimidating to me because this is the way I walk around in life in general. All right, callers, we are done with calls. Get to the IMs, and then we'll get out of here. I got time for, not too much. Be silly. Hey, Sam, I really think that Biden's poll lead is because people think he would be most likely to beat Trump. Do you still believe that people should vote strategically? It seems to me it leaves us with the results. Oh, I already talked about that. Gregory from Oklahoma. Y'all need to do another Jimmy Show show parody as soon as possible. Also, I can't believe Michael dismissed the genre of new metal as just being super white thing when new metal brought working class people of all colors and creeds together. As a socialist, I can't believe he didn't know this.
Okay.
Boom.
Jonathan,
I must be wearing orthotics because I stand corrected.
Jonathan Armstead. Sam, kudos to your Boston Red Sox manager, Alex Cora. Yes. He's skipping the customary post-World Series trip to the White House. When pressed as to why, Cora talked about the fact Puerto Rico is still waiting on relief from the Trump administration. Two players, David Price and Mookie Betts, are also skipping. I love this, especially since Trump, as I noted before, hasn't thrown out a first pitch at a baseball game longer than any U.S. president. Those tiny hands can't grip the ball. Secret identity politics. I found Barack Obama's college basketball brackets much more annoying than Trump's blaming the Kentucky Derby result on political correctness. As a person who works in medical billing, I would love this business to be absorbed by the government. I'm happy now. One, hi, Sam. Do you agree with Dave regarding Bernie? Actually, do you agree with his reporting on establishment Dems regarding Bernie? The idea that establishment Democrats don't think that Bernie can win, I wouldn't be surprised about it. I mean, I've seen reporting, particularly, like out of Pennsylvania right now, but, I'm not convinced that that's not motivated reasoning. These folks don't necessarily know. And if you're supportive of somebody and this is the currency that we're operating in, that's what you're going to say in the primary. That's what people are, do. I find it hard to believe that Biden can win in a way that Bernie can't in Pennsylvania. I find that very hard to believe.
It's fake. It's a fake argument.
Well, it's an argument,
wrong.
and I think it's not. It's an argument. It's a real argument, but I just would need to see more data to support that.
Well, there's on a thought experiment level, though. Like, there's a strong argument that both Biden and Bernie could beat Trump. And if you just want to talk about the swing voters, Biden's got the people who care more about being socially conservative. Bernie's got the people who care more about economic populism, but Bernie has something that Biden doesn't have, which is all the people who don't normally vote, who skew poor, who would hypothetically come out for Bernie.
I think both Bernie and Biden would probably beat Trump fairly easily. So let's take this opportunity to do what we need to do for most human beings.
My job decided to give us merit-based quarterly bonuses in lieu of raises for the past 3 years, and it divides us out to be less than the cost of living for 1 year, let alone 3. I decided to use this bonus to subscribe to MR and then donate the rest to Shahid Buttar, Ilhan Omar, and Bernie Sanders, so my pandering hush money can do some actually good to change the system. Good for you. Smoot Court. Last week, when you replayed Trump's Muslim ban clip, you didn't know what he meant when he said, remember the polls. He meant the scary Muslim majority country opinion polls that Sam Harris had always talked about. Yeah, we had speculated on that. Also, on the Ben Shapiro clip that was related to that, I've seen him do a solid 20 angry minutes of how bad Ilhan Omar is, and Muslims in general also citing those polls, and then go straight into a reading for an ad for a combat weapons manufacturer. Oh, Jesus. His show, the Monday after the Christchurch shooting, the line to mass murder couldn't be straighter. A left-handed leftist. Sam, you teased that you have opinions about why there are so few Gen Xers in politics. I'm Gen X. I have my ideas about why, but I'd really like to hear yours. The long and short of it is just that the baby boomer generation was so big, and that it overshadowed. There just was not the overshadowed the culture, business, politics, all of it in our society. And the baby boomer was just so much larger that it dictated everything, largely because they just had more, it was literally just more people. And so that translated into more things were marketed to them, and more people were simpatico, and, they had more shared experiences, and they would, so I think that's why that generation is hanging on. And I think to a certain extent too, it was, it had to do with like the experience of the 60s too. I think, sort of like emancipated people, and a lot of people wanted their time in the sun.
That is a very long-winded way of getting out of admitting that your generation is a bunch of slackers who don't care.
That's the best thing I can say about our generation. There's also, they were more right-wing than.
Yeah, the ones who are in politics are mostly not great.
Congressional baseball fan. Recently, I was telling my mom about love for long-form jokes, and I told her about some of the IMs I've sent to MR, and I had to explain to her the origin of my name. She did not think it was funny, but she was impressed by Sam and Michael's professional delivery of my work. So I just wanted to give a heartfelt thanks for helping me to convince my mom that I'm a successful comedy writer, and it hasn't been a waste for me to spend so much time and money on all this baseball memorabilia and equipment. Anyway, oh, Jesus. Phil. I just think the argument that Trump will attack Bernie as being socialist is really short-sighted. If you look at Trump's attacks, he has repeatedly called the whole Democratic Party as being far left. Yes, I think
like all of them that
I just don't think that is going to work.
So they attacked Obama for 8 years.
They say that about literally every Democrat to the point where it ceases to mean anything.
Right.
It's like the boy who cried wolf. And Bernie's the
Obama
wolf.
was a socialist, right? According to them. TMBS fan, imagine how depressing a Trump v. Biden campaign is going to be. That is all. I don't want to imagine that. Attorney Andrew, I should say, missed the first 15 minutes of the show. You may have covered this, but can we dunk on the baseball wonk Nate Silver for some of his galaxy brain takes this weekend? Yeah, he was a little bit strange. Yeah. On the question about loss of medical insurance job, Bernie's bill covers it. This discussion is distraction from the real issue, which is our unemployment benefit system needs to be much better. Remember, the welfare state is about how to aid people who can't or shouldn't work. All right, 3 more IMs. Dr. Chaos MD. My girlfriend is far more vocal than I with her principles and political beliefs, something for which I respect her deeply. She pointed out some serious misogyny and general ass-hattery in a Facebook group and was rewarded by someone creating a sock puppet account and sending her an obscene message. Oh, that's nice. I checked in with her, and she seems unfazed by the message since she's resolute in her not having done anything wrong, but it was a good reminder that if you are like me and are not as outspoken as others, be sure to provide support for those who are, so that those viewpoints you respect and agree with are not drowned out by douchebags. Good point. Brother from Brooklyn, the right encourages free thinkers on the issue of racism, but is oddly against the marketplace of ideas when it comes to criticism of Israel. Indeed. Link. Ben Shapiro on reliable sources. Brian Stetler. Yes, unbelievable. Biden attention again. A cult of personality instead of good policies. Harris or Biden in debate with Donald J. Trump. Only Harris could handle. And the final IM of the day. Joe Snuffy. For those who keep saying that Biden would have the advantage over Sanders in the general against Trump because Trump can't run against him as a socialist, I feel that we need to remind them in 2015, Trump already proved that he does a great job when he runs against Republicans. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes